Drivers, start your engines. Pull those belts down tight one more time, warm up those tires, hit your marks, and let's go racing, boys and girls. Nascar, Indycar, Formula One, Formula E, and NHRA Racing Talk. This is the Championship Racing Network. Now here is your host, Steve West and Matt Nicholson, with producer John Myers.
Indeed, in some way, shape, or form. Let's put it that way. Matt's going to join us by phone here in a couple of minutes. Producer John via remote, as usual. Matt and I are going to get ready to get into some clarifications that NASCAR just handed down. Matt only going to be able to join us for the first hour, so we're going to talk about a driver who's going to be filling in and picking up some races here in the Xfinity Series, but hasn't got a whole lot of experience at it. Got a situation where NASCAR has made some deals, but they still got some deals that they got to make because there's a pretty big contract that's coming up to an end at the end of this year. Plus, we'll talk a little bit about Bowman Gray as well, because let's face it, that was some pretty interesting stuff last week. If you watched it, we'll find out whether or not we liked it and whether or not you liked it. That and so much more, as we will deal with all the news and commentary of the week as well. Matt only with us for hour one. We'll see how hour two goes. Let's get it rolling next.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Four tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Well, we should be. If I did my job right, let's put it that way. Let's turn that on right there, and let's see. Is Matt on the phone?
Matt is on.
Matt is on the phone. Hey, I did my job right. What do you know? Might actually get the hang of this radio thing after, I don't know, a couple more decades. Welcome into the show. Appreciate you, man. Know that you got some other things going on here, but you said you were going to be able to be with us for what, about the first half of the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Half.
Good deal. You gave me some things that you really wanted to talk about. The first things being what they were. We finally got on the track in 2025 for NASCAR last weekend at Bowman Gray, and we've been kind of doing small steps in this the last couple of seasons. I mean, you think about it, NASCAR kind of trying to get back to its roots in some way, shape, or form. First, they revived North Wilkesboro Speedway, brought the All-Star race there. And then we learned about with the reveal of the 2025 schedule that not only have they still got North Wilkesboro there, they're going to go back to Rockingham for points races in the Xfinity and the Truck Series. And then they said, you know what? Why don't we go back to a place we haven't been at since 1971, and let's bring the Cup Series back to Bowman Gray. Granted, not a points race like it was that last race in 1971, but for the kind of secondary all-star race, if you want to put it that way, especially now, because you and I, we got to talking about this. It was kind of funny. We got this four-way communication with the PA group from up at Talladega Superspeedway. It's you, me, it's Matt Coulter, it's Grady Sapp, who people at our home station are very, very familiar with. And we got to talking about it, and I believe it was Matt Coulter who was saying, when did we suddenly get to the point where everybody seemed to be able to be involved in the clash? Didn't it used to be just for race winners from the last year, or was it pole sitters, or whatever the ruling was? And
pole winners. It was
pole
winners.
Yeah, there you go. And it just expanded and blew up from there. And he's right. I mean, it's changed from what it was. So this is kind of a secondary all-star race in a lot of ways.
That's what it's turned into, really. And it's they're going back to their root levels and going back to these grassroots places, but they're staying away from the grassroots format of it.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Is that a good thing, bad thing? What do you think?
They got half of it right. They need to get the other half of it right.
Okay. So they need to go back to making it a bonus for those who did something specific the year before in this case.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They need to.
I tend to agree with it. Taking cues from short track racing all around the country. We had heat races on Saturday, kind of knocked down some of those that were hoping to get in by the time the last chance qualifying race took place on Sunday afternoon. Starting lineup for the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray came down to 23 starters in all. Hendrick Motorsports driver Chase Elliott has been the reigning most popular driver for several years now. Last year was kind of a down year for him, but he has now joined his father as winners of the season opening cash grab race. Bill won the Clash back in 1987. That launched him on to the Cup Series title. I don't know whether this is going to do the same thing, because if you think about it, that win by Elliott, dominant as well. Bill Elliott obviously had a car that was, in 1987, very, very difficult to beat. That was the same year that he set, correct me if I'm wrong, the all-time qualifying record out of Talladega, 87, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you think about that car, you think about what he was able to do that year, and a lot of it was on the strength of being able to just go ultimately really, really fast on tracks like a Daytona, Talladega, and the other tracks where speed was, top speed specifically, was a big thing. This doesn't necessarily translate the same way. I mean, here you're going to the Clash, but you're going to start the season at almost the exact opposite of the quarter-mile track that Bowman Gray is. I don't know whether this necessarily launches him. It's not a bad way to start, but at the same time, how much really is he learning from this that he can take into the season?
Really, you're getting back. This is really now what it's developed to, is getting back into the swing of things with your team and getting your communication levels back, and getting back in a rhythm of stuff, mainly because from nothing to this right here, you really can't take anything from this to anywhere.
Other than maybe feeling like you got a little bit of momentum, or is that even a factor?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. You got a little bit of momentum.
Okay. 172 of the 200 laps were led by Chase Elliott. First battled Denny Hamlin, who led several laps himself, but then he started to fade a little bit. Ryan Blaney, who needed to get in the race through that last chance qualifier, started at the back of the field, worked his way up through, and was battling for the lead when the laps ran out. He ended up settling for second place. So here's your rundown. Chase Elliott winner, Brian Blaney second, Denny Hamlin third, Joey Logano up to fourth with Bubba Wallace in fifth. And Ross Chastain was sixth, trailed by Austin Cindric, Tyler Reddick, Shane Van Gisbergen, and Chris Buescher. All but Chase Briscoe were able to make it to the finish line. Briscoe got involved into a crash shortly after the race restarted following the mid-race break. He got hit and spun, caused a steering issue on the 19, and they parked it. So, overall, and we talked about this a little bit on the Cross Flags podcast on Wednesday, but we'll go back over it real quick. Was this what NASCAR really needed? Was this a success?
I would call it a success. Reason because you had a full house, and I said this the other day. That 17,000 at Bowman Gray, standing room only, full house, looked way, way, way better than them trying to fill that Coliseum in Los Angeles with 70,000. One, two. After the race, you had majority of the drivers saying on their respective social medias, that was extremely fun, back to grassroots. I hope we go back. I want to go back. We want to go back.
Yeah.
That was really fun. And you got a lot of positive feedback from the crowd of how that was fun to watch. So, yes, I would call it a success, and I would give it an 8.
I was still hearing positive things yesterday. I mean, you think about it. We were 5 days removed from it, and people were still raving about it. And I got to admit, it presented well on television. And for those who were not or didn't check out the Cross Flags podcast, I said that I was going to go onto the Max and watch the driver view. And I spent the first half of the race with a 4-way split camera. I chose one of those two, and it featured Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin on the left side, and on the right side, Noah Gragson at the top, Chase Briscoe at the bottom, which helped me because, as I've said before, the guy who I'm probably going to be rooting for this year is going to be Chase Briscoe. But in watching that, it was fascinating. They had to get some growing pains out, and they'll still be doing that because it's still a learning process. Some of the telemetry wasn't working at the very beginning of the race, and they finally got that figured out about 25 or so laps in. And being able to just listen to the cars. And when you're in the 4-way, by the way, all you're hearing is the cars. You don't get any radio chatter because all it would be is 4 cars just talking over each other. So they just left it at the cars. And it was actually fun to kind of get almost a driver's viewpoint of it. And then when we got into halftime, I went ahead and switched over to Chase Briscoe's point of view and got the whole situation about how he got spun out and they had the steering problem that came about in the pits and parked it. And then I went over to another driver. I went over to Joey Logano just because in a fantasy league that we're involved in, that's who I picked. And like I said, to be able to hear the communication between the driver and the spotter, the driver and the crew chief, and that is a different angle. And I mean, obviously we can do that to a certain extent, especially if you go to the track and you rent the headsets and you pick your favorite driver, whoever it may be, you kind of get the same feeling of it. But at the same time, you're also getting, again, pretty much the viewpoint of what the driver's seeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to go out and get the Max subscription. If you happen to have it in your budget, by all means, go for it. Or if you just happen to have it now, it's certainly something to check out just to kind of add to the experience or change it up a little bit. This week, going to be busy. I jumped the gun a little bit last week. I was a little too excited last week, just to be real honest. Speed Weeks didn't begin until this week. Front row qualifying on Wednesday. Fox Sports 1, MRN Radio have your coverage 8:15 p.m. Eastern, 7:15 p.m. Central Time. Then you got Thursday, duels at Daytona. First one slated to get rolling right about 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time. That'll be on Fox Sports 1 and MRN Radio. Then we get into the weekend. Friday, we got the, Fresh from Florida 250. That's the Craftsman Truck Series. Fox Sports 1, MRN Radio starts 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. We also have, what do we got here? Formula E. They're going to be running a double-header weekend at Jeddah and Saudi Arabia. I'll just deal with the first race. That'll take place on Friday as well. It'll actually happen before the Truck Series race. Friday, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time. That's going to be happening Valentine's Day. Diriyah, Saudi Arabia, 19-turn, 1.86-mile-long course. May or may not show up on CBS and or the CBS Sports Network at some point in time. At this point, I don't see plans for live coverage of the event. Delayed, maybe. Again, CBS is being really weird on this. The only thing that I know is that the Roku network, CBS Sports Network feed does seem to carry it generally, and that's free.
Right.
You get to stream that for free. So, if you got a smart TV, you can go get that downloaded and check it out there if this is really what you want to check out. We'll give you the rest of the schedule next Saturday here on the show because, hey, everything's going to start after our show is done anyway. All right, so we've talked a little bit about Bowman Gray here. Anything else on Bowman Gray other than the fact that obviously we spent 3 years at Los Angeles and then they came and went here? We can pretty much assume we're going to get 3 years at least at Bowman Gray. Should this be a permanent?
Mm-hmm.
Should this be permanent, or at least for the foreseeable future?
Yeah. There's no question about it that it should be, because if you've got something that you started out on the right foot with, and everybody is in a positive manner about it,
mm-hmm.
let it ride. Don't let it slip around and you've got some reporters and media people talking about, even before the green flag even drops in the air, about it possibly maybe moving international next year to Brazil.
Yeah. Talk about jumping the gun.
Break.
Talk about
Give
jumping the
it a
gun. Big
break.
time. Well,
Yeah.
and again, you want to do some sort of exhibition race down in Brazil, fine. Do it during the off-racing season. I mean, considering how short the quote-unquote off-season is when it comes to NASCAR, there's not really an off-season that much. But do it at that point in time. Again, Brazil's in the southern hemisphere. You could do an exhibition race in January. And it'd be nice, warm weather. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. You got plenty of time to get the cars down there, get the drivers down there, and bring everything back and not have to really worry about totally messing up everybody's schedule. If you really insist upon doing an exhibition race down there. That's the way you do it. You take advantage of the fact that, again, they're in the southern hemisphere, which means in January, they're in the middle of summer down there. Take advantage of that weather. Go ahead and do that, but don't get to the point where you're messing up their scheduling as they get prepared for a 36-race points season with 38 races altogether when you include the Clash and the All-Star race in there. And remember, this is one of those kind of strange years where they did the scheduling in such a way you have exactly one off weekend throughout the season if you're in the Cup Series, and that's Easter weekend. And, that's a long slog, considering the fact that most of these guys are working 5 and 6 days, sometimes even 7 days a week.
Yep.
You know this better than I do. Heck, you've been in the situation where you work on your cars.
Yeah, and sometimes, well, not sometimes, a majority of the time, that's a 7-day-a-week process unless you keep your stuff ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Which I was able to keep my stuff ahead of the game being only one car, but if you got a 4-car effort, yeah, that's a 7-day-a-week job.
Yeah. So once we get the season started at Daytona, the only off week they've got to look forward to is Easter weekend. This weekend being the other one. And they've only done one race, so it's not like they're getting a whole lot of rest here. Something to think about. And, NASCAR's going to do what they're going to do. We just put our 2 cents in. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of things. Number one, we got sponsorship situations within the world of NASCAR that we do need to get to. One's kind of good and kind of bad all at the same time. The other one really throws things up into the air. Plus, we got a kid who doesn't have a whole lot of experience, but he's about to get several races in the Xfinity Series.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back into the show. Just underway here. Producer John producing by a remote, as usual, but he is participating as he can on CRN Live on YouTube in the chat area. So, by the way, feel free to say hello to him. I'm sure he'll respond in due course. Matt is by phone as he's got something going on for hour number 2 with us for hour number 1. So we got the show started. We talked a little bit about what happened in Bowman Gray, and now this is an interesting one here because we actually talked about this kid a couple of weeks ago when he was signed to a deal with Joe Gibbs Racing. Their star car, the number 19 car, is going to be driven by several different drivers over the course of the year. A couple of them going to be moonlighters. But Justin Bonsignor, he's going to get more time behind the wheel here as well in the 19, more than what he had initially signed on for. That number is now up to 9, Matt. What we do know is this. He will kick off the season in that car at Daytona, I believe, and then return to it at Homestead, Miami. He'll be back in it at Martinsville, Rockingham, Pocono. Then he'll be back in it at Iowa, Bristol, Kansas, and then season finale at Phoenix. And we're not trying to down the kid necessarily, but the situation with Justin is the fact that he doesn't have a whole lot of experience here. You're noting he's got exactly 1 start to his credit in the Xfinity Series.
Not taken away from his what I would say the legacy he's developing in the modifieds of the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
He is a very, very renowned modified driver and had a ton of success there.
Right.
But, and this is going to be back on the rant that I had a couple of weeks ago. We're knocking out Mike Wallace from driving the 500 because he was out taking care of his family and his wife that was sick that he unfortunately lost. We're letting somebody in that has never sat in a stock car in a super speedway form into the biggest race of the year.
Yeah, season opener.
And now we're letting in someone to drive the Xfinity race that has a collective 1 start at New Hampshire,
which in the modifieds he's familiar with. You know, so we can kind of understand that, but some of these other tracks, he may.
Wow.
We don't know that he's ever set foot in any one of them, much less raced on it.
Every single time they allow driver A or driver B to run this race or that race, there is now some sort and some level of sheer, clear defined hypocrisy that goes on when they allow when these entry lists come out.
Yeah.
Let's say it that way.
And then they don't allow Mike Wallace.
They don't allow somebody that's got a multi-time winner on super speedways.
Yeah. No, I agree.
This is insanity, pure insanity.
Yeah. Well, and he's not the only one. I mean, there are several other drivers that are kind of getting in here and they're doing some more. I mean, we talked about, for example, Greg Van Alst, who recently kind of just got into a couple of Xfinity Series races here or there. He's driving for Joey Gase Racing on a schedule. He's going to be in 19 events this year. It'll start at Phoenix. It will include, but is not limited to, races at Rockingham, Talladega, Charlotte, Indianapolis, Iowa, and the final 3 races of this year in the number 35 Chevrolet. He'll be at Talladega, Martinsville, and Phoenix. We can talk about the Pardus Racing Organization. Preston Pardus, driver, owner of that. He'll be on a part-time basis once again. He's a road course ace. His first race will be at COTA. Rest of the slate at the time isn't known. But if we go basically on what we have seen, 2024 races that he entered was COTA, Portland, Sonoma, Chicago, and the Charlotte Roval. He had 1 oval track entry at Martinsville. Pardus doesn't have a whole lot of experience. 28 career starts in the Xfinity Series. Does have 3 top 10s, best of 7th at the Roval 2021. That's going back to his strength. Truth be told, whether or not Preston has any thoughts about trying to take this particular entry onto a full-time basis or not, or whether he's just happy racing another series and then doing road and street course racing whenever he feels like it in NASCAR.
Yeah, the car that they have for their respective team the car that they have is a road course car, so they're firmly on road courses.
Yeah.
They don't have a secondary car to be able to run oval.
Yeah, and we
But
haven't heard anything that states that he has a desire to expand that right now.
Right.
Okay. And then we go back to Greg Van Alst. You and I, we've seen him over the last few years here and there, usually at Talladega. He's gotten into an ARCA start or two here or there. Doesn't have a whole lot of experience, though. Now he's getting 19 races this year.
He was I think it was 2023, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 2023. He was a legitimate threat to win the ARCA Menard Series championship.
Yeah.
He won Daytona,
Mm-hmm.
and he has some pretty solid runs with his family-owned team that he fills the cars for. So that's. I know I've elated and elaborated and stated my philosophy on how people should be able to get pulled up.
Sure, yeah.
But I can make a minor exception for
Okay.
Van Alst, because he's won on super speedways in ARCA.
True.
He's ran competitively with a lower budgeted car. Let's word it that way.
Yeah, I think that's well
He's
put.
held his own. He's held his own. Now, granted, if you probably lined up his ARCA car, his super speedway ARCA car versus the Gase super speedway ARCA car, and stood me in front of it and said, pick a car to race in, I'm probably going to pick his family car.
You think so? Okay.
I'm probably going to pick his family car.
Okay. All right. I understand that. So Greg Van Alst, you really don't have that much of a problem with. And again, the only problem is the relative lack of experience that Justin Bonsignor has. That's the biggest situation right now. It's nothing really against his driving ability in and of itself, right?
Yeah, it's nothing against that. It's just when you got a clear-cut path that you have to take to get approved to run super speedways, and the sanctioning body and the series and the competition wing of it duck and dodge every single corner of it, and they just go around it and pick and choose who they want to let into the race, basically. And there's no other way to say it, because it's clear. It seems that way. That's where the confusion comes in at for everybody.
Right.
Now he may go out there. I mean, he's going to be starting in a Gibbs car, and we know those Gibbs Xfinity cars are very fast, very good race cars.
That they are.
So he may get on that super speedway and he may light it up. I don't know that. Nobody knows that.
True.
But it's all back to me of how the clear cut path that it is supposed to be doesn't get taken.
Mm-hmm. And again, kind of with the relative lack of experience that Justin has versus the amount of experience that Mike Wallace has, to me, it really doesn't matter how long ago he was in the car. And it didn't seem to matter with them how long ago the driver was in the car when it came to Casey Kane.
Absolutely.
So
Casey, and granted, Casey Kane's been in running his sprint car pretty religiously ever since he stepped out of the Cup car. He's been in the sprint car a lot.
Sure.
But it's back to the basis of how the black and white rule is and how the black and white verbiage is of the path you're supposed to take when you don't have experience at certain levels of racetracks.
Yeah. All right. We're going to split this part of it up here because there's a good aspect to this and there's a bad aspect to this. NASCAR has signed a deal, an extension of their deal, really, with Comcast Xfinity. And what this means is that Xfinity will remain as the title sponsor of the secondary series for now. But it also brings in a new bonus program that begins effective immediately. And this does not just affect the Xfinity series. This affects the Cup series and the Craftsman Truck series as well. And this is the bonus points system kind of coming back. In this case, they're going to give a bonus point called the Xfinity Bonus Point. Xfinity Fastest Lap Award is what this is being called. Will get a championship point to the driver in that race truck, Xfinity, or Cup who is running for championship in that series, so in other words, not effective for the Moonlighters or not effective for the part-timers, who are running for the championship in that series. And this is something that we had kind of seen way back when. We used to get bonus points for leading laps. We used to get bonus points for leading the most laps. To me, this is kind of the start of bringing that back in some small way, shape, or form. Formula One just dropped the whole fastest lap point award. IndyCar, though, does have a similar bonus point system still. At the end of the season, there's also a charitable aspect to this, which I think is pretty cool. The driver with the most fastest lap awards in the season will have a donation made to the charity organization of their choice. $30,000 will go to the Cup Series for the Cup Series driver, $20,000 for the Xfinity Series driver winner, and $10,000 in the Craftsman Truck Series. Comcast Xfinity might, depending on whether or not that particular company, organization, whatever it is, doesn't interfere with some of the stuff that they're doing on the side. They may match the donation up to their own idea. I don't have a problem with this program, but to me, and we kind of mentioned this during the Cross Flags podcast, to me, this is what we would call a good start. I have no problem with bringing back, bonus points programs. Why are we just doing it, though, for the fastest lap? Why can't we do this like we used to do it? We mentioned this in that, would it have changed much in 2024? Actually, it would have. Because if we had had this particular award last year, the regular season champion would have been totally different, because the guy who won the most fastest laps throughout the course of the 2024 season was one Kyle Larson, who lost the regular season championship by one single point. He had 5 fastest laps throughout the course of the year last year. So, yes, it would have made a difference. And that's always kind of the key. Is this going to make a difference? Yes, actually it will. And for me, again, it's a good start. And I think and you really expanded upon this during the podcast this week, in the fact that why don't we go ahead and bring back the other bonus programs that we used to have?
Yeah, if you're going to do one, why don't you bring back the other ones? Do the old program of, if you led a lap during the race, you got 1 bonus point. Mm-hmm. If you led the most laps during the race, you got 5 bonus points.
Yeah.
Bring one, bring the other.
And I think to a certain extent, especially when you're looking at what we have kind of been complaining about, I guess, for lack of a better term, when it comes to our own home track of Talladega along with Daytona, in that they're trying to figure out a way to save gas because they want to spend as little time on pit road as possible. We need to dangle some sort of carrot out there that says, hey, listen, you have a chance to go out there and get a bonus point for the fastest lap. You have a chance to go out there and get a bonus point for leading a lap. And you have the 5 bonus points for leading the most laps. And let's face it, Daytona and Talladega, the only way you're going to do that is to map the accelerator.
Absolutely.
So if you want them to not sit there and make these 2 tracks gas mileage races, for lack of a better term, dangle a big carrot out there. I think that's a big enough carrot to where it might actually change some stuff.
Or, and I'll use this for an example, because this year Talladega falls right in the middle of round 8.
Yeah.
And with points could possibly be in play, do something to where it makes them not ride around. I don't know, maybe double the fastest lap point, because
make it an even bigger carrot.
Because the fastest lap thing at a super speedway is going to be probably the most irrelevant thing I've ever seen, because you don't know who's going to get it and don't know when it's going to come.
Yeah, very true.
Because the man that's sitting in 31st or 32nd, sitting in line, all he would have to do is trail just a little bit and leave just enough gap, and then floor it. And if they're running 3 wide in front of him, he's got such a huge pocket of air that he's sitting in, the slipstreaming in, and he could run. Third man sitting in 31st could be running a lap like 197 or 198, where everybody else up at the top is going 193, 194.
Yeah. Let's see here. So let's kind of go over those restrictions again. Driver not running for points in the series can't claim the point. In other words, no moonlighters claim points. If a moonlighter or other part-timer does, however, claim the fastest lap, the team will get the point because obviously you have the owner's championship in addition to the driver's championship. So, yeah, but it just won't be awarded to the driver. Only the team will get it. Title contenders in each of the 3 series aren't eligible for the points in the title race. In other words, if the fastest lap is set by one of the 4 title contenders in the Cup, Xfinity, or Truck Series, they can't do it. And if they are one of those, it just doesn't get awarded, from what I understand. If there happens to be a tie between 2 drivers for the fastest lap, could happen. They thought about it ahead of time. The tiebreaker goes to the driver who happens to have the better finish. So if Matt and I happen to get the exact same fastest time or fastest speed on a lap, and Matt wins the race and I finish 4th, Matt gets the point. But if Matt got disqualified, the point goes away. It doesn't go to me. The point dies. It does not get awarded to the next fastest finisher. Is that a good deal, or should it go to the next person?
It should go to the next one.
Okay. Matt Lederer, who's Comcast VP of Partnership, Brand Partnership and Engagement, said this, quote, "We're not just entering year 11 of our partnership, we're embarking on year 1 of a renewed relationship with NASCAR, filled with fresh energy and exciting opportunities to enhance the competition on the track in a way that's never been done before." Okay, never been done. I don't know about that, but go for it. The thing about the extension is that not only has the Xfinity Series as a title sponsor throughout the year, there's an opening here. And because we're up against a break, I want to get into this. But this new deal is a long-term deal. But the aspect of them being the title sponsor of what we now call the Xfinity Series is a 1-year extension. But there is an open door. And that'll lead us into what we will then continue to talk about when it comes to NASCAR dealing with sponsorship issues for the 2025 season and beyond. That's next.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Fuel only. Fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back into the show. Matt by phone with us for one more segment here. Producer John on CRN Live. Say hi to him if you have the opportunity. And we're talking about the extension of the deal between NASCAR and Comcast Xfinity. Some other kind of aspects of this. Xfinity Mobile is part of this deal. They become the official wireless company of NASCAR. There's Xumo, XUMO, which is the official streaming platform for Charter and Xfinity. Or Comcast and Xfinity, I'm sorry. It now becomes the official video and streaming partner of NASCAR. Customers can get exclusive content through that platform. Exactly what that means, I don't know. It could be just, documentaries. Really, I haven't not that much of an idea of exactly what form that's going to take. Of course, we talked about the bonus point, and Keith on CRN Live on YouTube did bring up an interesting point. I'd like them to give a point for winning the pole. To me, there's a whole lot of opportunities here to make these drivers go after something. I mean, yeah, they like the idea of a pole, but some of them are like, if I win the pole, great. If I don't, I don't. Doling out a championship point for winning the pole, not necessarily a bad idea. And to me, it just adds on to the bonus point award system that we could bring in that you and I are talking about, build upon this Xfinity Fastest Lap Award, give a point for the pole, give the point for the fastest lap, give a point for leading a lap, give 5 points for leading the most.
Yeah, I mean, give some incentive and make it to where they quit riding.
Yeah, give them that carrot or rabbit, as I happen to mention, to chase, and watch them go chase it. Some of them will actually go out there and chase it. If they choose not to chase it, that's on them, and it might come back and bite them in the hindquarters at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on them. But again, this is a long-term extension that has the aspect of the title sponsorship of the Xfinity Series that only goes through 2025. After that, either another sponsor will come in, or there could be a renegotiation to keep Xfinity in the title role. They haven't necessarily nixed that idea, but they do seem to be kind of cooling on it. They did say that they will remain one of the premier partners of the Cup Series along with Coca-Cola and Busch Light. But you and I have both come to it, and I have to admit, you thought about it first long before I did, about, hey, if we're going to continue to go down this road of kind of throwing back to what used to be, why don't we go back and talk to one of those companies that used to be a title sponsor?
Hello, Busch. You're now in the picture.
Exactly. It came in as the Busch Series. The Truck Series came in as the Craftsman Super Truck Series and then became the Craftsman Truck Series. Now they're back. Why not?
Bring it back.
Yeah.
If you're going to try one, try the other.
I mean, I get it. Busch has themselves the premier partnership with the Cup Series, but you've done all this stuff before. You've been a long-term sponsor within NASCAR for a very, very long time. I don't really think that you're hurting so bad, even though the Bud Light debacle does still kind of haunt them. But I don't think it's hurting them that bad to the point where they're drowning in red ink.
Nope. Not at all.
Come on, let's do it.
If you're going to do one, I mean, here's your shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you would spark. Look what happened when Craftsman come back to truck. It sparked it gave a little bit of a renewed spark to the Truck Series.
Sure.
So if you bring Busch back, you get an automatic re-spark of the Busch Series.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even at the very beginning, and just being able to kind of throw it back to that particular memory that we all kind of have, I think it would be a fantastic idea. And then we get to the other deal here, and this one kind of came out of the blue this week. NASCAR's deal with their official race fuel, which is Sunoco. Turns out it's set to come to an end after this 2025 season. That was a pretty quiet deal. We didn't realize that deal was up this year, but according to a report in the Sports Business Journal, it is. Sunoco has been the official fuel of NASCAR since 2004, but after 21 years appears maybe not any further. NASCAR hasn't commented, and there's no word on who the series officials might be talking to about possibly replacing Sunoco. Here's the deal when it comes to Sunoco. Sunoco is still going to be around, but they're kind of changing their business concentrations, if you will. Sunoco has noted that they're working on a transition from being a business to consumer retailer to becoming more of a business-to-business organization. In other words, supplying fuel to others, mostly independent gas stations. To that end, starting back in 2017, they began selling a lot of their Sunoco-branded convenience store gas station brands over to 7-Eleven, where 7-Eleven is. And again, some other Sunoco-branded outlets have been sold in areas where 7-Eleven is not, but that's 1,100 of them. That means they're getting out of, by and large, the gas station business as they can. But NASCAR and Sunoco both have said, like the Xfinity Series, there's an open door here. Company's director of marketing, Sunoco's director of marketing, Fred McConnell, told the Sports Business Journal, quote, "We can confirm that we are in talks with NASCAR about 2026 and beyond. So it's not like this is the definite end, as opposed to some of the headlines that you happen to see when people go overtly sensational online. Don't believe everything you read on the internets, people. Especially if it's on social media. But
yeah, no kidding.
Let's presume for a moment that Sunoco has decided, you know what, we're done. Do you try and go back and figure out whether or not Unocal could fit the bill, or do you try and go talk to a Shell or a Speedway, or heck, for that matters, do you go and try and talk to a Buc-ee's? I mean, who is it that you would go talk to if you were in the position of NASCAR looking for the official fuel supplier of NASCAR?
I could see it now. Buc-ee's, the official fuel of NASCAR. That would be outstanding.
I'm just throwing it out there.
But yeah. If it was me, they've and Sunoco's ending after this year, and Xfinity's ending after this year. You got a chance to now have the trifecta back in play. Because nothing would thrill me personally more than to see those Unocal 76 balls up on the towers outside of the corners at racetracks.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. I'm pretty sure they could foot the bill, because if I recall correctly, Unocal 76 is under the Gulf oil brand, if I'm not mistaken.
That might be right.
And we know Gulf Oil has the money.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, most of them do. You go to Shell, you go to, Exxon Mobil, you go to, BP Amoco or Chevron. Yeah, these guys got the money.
Yeah. It's Chevron, Texaco,
Texaco, that was
Mobil, Shell, Amoco and BP, Valero.
Got about Valero, yeah. I heard somebody mention.
Those are the main.
I heard somebody mention that they ought to go after VP Racing Fuel. So are they big enough to be able to handle something like that?
VP is big, but they're not that big yet.
I mean, this is a pretty big bone to chew on, and I'm not sure how big of a dog VP Racing Fuels is.
I'm not either, but honestly, at the end of the day, it's looking at it one way or the other for me. Ultimately, you want to see Unocal 76 come back because they've got the ability to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side of me saying, I will be totally surprised if it's not Shell.
Okay. Well, time will tell. We'll have to see exactly how that goes. And since we got a little bit more time, I want to kind of go over this with you and see what you think about this, because this came up late last year with all that questionable, are we fixing how everything is going? So NASCAR's clarified those penalties, specifically related to the car makers. The new rule is defined a section, and this is going to go really deep into the weeds, but just bear with me here. The new rule defined a section 10.5.2.8.c includes the following possible penalties for an original equipment manufacturer, read them currently a Chevrolet, Ford, or Toyota, about penalties for kind of trying to influence the finish of a race. Amongst the things that the car makers could be slapped with, a loss of 25 to 50 manufacturer's points, a loss of between 30 and 60 wind tunnel hours, depending on the severity, I guess, a loss of between 2 to 4 vehicle tests, and finally a loss of anywhere from $250 to 500 restricted computational fluid dynamics test runs. The heck is that?
Engine-related stuff.
Thank you. Okay. According to NASCAR.com, the section of this new rule reads now as follows. Quote, NASCAR reserves the right to determine if an OEM has violated the rule or rules and may impose penalties on the OEM or its representatives accordingly. The following framework serves as a general guideline for assessing penalties. The examples provided are illustrative and not exhaustive, offering clarity on the types and range of infractions that may result in penalties should NASCAR determine that enforcement is warranted, unquote. NASCAR also clarified how this might affect the drivers and or team members with a section 5.5.a read that any member who attempts to improperly influence the outcome of the event or encourages, persuades, or induces others to do so shall be subject to penalties as outlined in section 10, violations and disciplinary action, prohibited actions. These include but are not limited to intentional planning or conduct that prioritizes objectives other than achieving the best possible competitive result for their team. There's a lot of subjectivity in here. In other words, you and I could be on a panel of, we'll say 3 to 5, well, let's say 5 judges who determined that, just throwing the name out there, that Chevrolet or certain Chevrolet teams with the direction of Chevrolet decided to try to figure out a way to keep a Toyota driver, just to throw it out there, from being able to get the places that he or she needs. So they've gone through the process of influencing the race. You and I, of this 5-member panel, may have an idea of what said penalty should be, and you and I might determine that it should be a slap on the wrist, but the other 3 members could outvote us by saying, hey, we need to throw the hammer down on him. And now all of a sudden we've got this. I mean, this is something that, as subjective as it is, because to me, NASCAR will determine if penalties are warranted. They could just absolutely throw the book at them. And this could change not just who wins the Cup Series title or the Xfinity or the Craftsman Truck Series title. This could change that, could change the owner's title winner, and it could change the manufacturer's title winner in all 3 series.
If they're going to go down this route, I don't think it needs to be just limited to manufacturer.
Okay.
You need to hit. There needs to be. It's outside of the manufacturer penalties. It needs to be, instead of this fluid dynamics, this vehicle to the whatever. Take that out of the picture.
Okay.
You make it to where if you're found to be manipulating a race with your manufacturer to try to help driver A or driver B get into a different round of the playoffs or get into the championship round, however that may be. If it's found to be that right there during said race, it needs to be one thing and one thing only for the manufacturer side, and that is total. You go from whatever your manufacturer point total is for that race, you lose all manufacturer points.
Okay.
If they're going to go that route, hit them that hard. If you're going to go that route, hit them that hard. Lose all your manufacturer points, and then you go to step 2. If you find that a spotter and where it needs to be, it doesn't need to be with. It needs to be spotter and driver. Spotter, driver, and what's a spotter, driver, and crew chief.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you're found to be one of said parties to manipulate, and it's clear that you did, because now with how much they got in the car and being able to tell what you do with throttle tracing and how much wheel you put into what, it's clear when I didn't mean to do that, but when contact happened, you turn the wheel hard left 50 degrees, which you turn the wheel 50 degrees, that's a clear right hook.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be, it should be, to set the tone and let somebody try this one time, and if you have to do it one time, I can promise you nobody else will do it again.
Take the judgment call out.
All manufacturer points avoided. 1. 2, spotter, driver, and crew chief set the next race.
And just like I just mentioned, take the judgment call out of it. Just make it the hammer fell, and don't worry about the rest of it.
You don't make it, judgment this, judgment that, and then when it's based off of one team or another, or one manufacturer or another, take the judgment out of it. You use clear data from the computer system within the car, which is crazy for me to say a computer system in a Cup car. But take the data from the computer system, you line it up with what action happened on the track, then that's where you make your penalty call.
And make it hurt.
Yep.
So that they don't do it again. You and I have kind of said that before, though. We said, hey, listen, if you're going to make a penalty and put it out there, make it hurt. Otherwise, they're just willing to do it again, especially if it doesn't hurt.
Somebody will try it again.
Well, we're going to let you go. Go take care of that business you got to take care of, and we'll see you back here in the studio next week. How's that?
All right, man.
All right. Appreciate you. Matt joining us by phone. Unfortunately, not able to stick with us through the rest of the show, but don't worry about it. We do still have the rest of the show to go. It'll be me, Solo, and you guys listening, commenting on CRN Live on YouTube. Don't forget, producer John's there as well, and he'll be taking part in his way as well. When we come back, congratulations out to an Xfinity Series driver, and how about that situation with a fourth OEM coming into NASCAR? Details next.
Don't touch that dial. The Championship Racing Network will be right back. Four tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
By the way, I have been alerted. Chi-Town Mark, who is a regular participant on the chat on YouTube, CRN Live on YouTube, subscribe right down there if you have not already. His wife, his beautiful wife, Ann, having a birthday today. Thank you very much for checking us out, number one, and more importantly, happy birthday. Hope it's a great day. Also, congratulations go out to Josh and his wife, Caitlin Balicki. Josh and Caitlin are now parents. Birth of their first child, son Cole, born Tuesday the 28th in the morning. Both mom and son are happy and healthy. It comes on the heels also of Balicki getting some extra sponsorship for his number 91 Chevrolet ride, DGM Motorsports. It's Rita's Italian Ice and Frozen Custard. They're going to be on board for multiple races this year. The first race, Daytona. Rest of the schedule will be announced later. Good stuff. Love it. A couple of good things going on this week. And then there's this soap opera deal between Honda and Nissan. And this was the proposed merger that was maybe going to be the final thing that might have pushed one or maybe both of those brands into NASCAR. But just in time for Valentine's Day, it appears that they're going to break up before Valentine's Day so they don't have to get each other any gifts. It was, again, as I said, would have been a good sign for bringing a fourth manufacturer or fourth OEM into NASCAR, but the two companies got to talking about how things might work, and apparently Honda got to looking at the Nissan books, and they didn't really care much for what they saw. Found out Nissan's got some debt that Honda's balking enough to begin hinting that the merger should be less than, let's just say an equal partnership. Nissan was thinking this was going to be 50-50. Honda looked at the books and said, maybe you ought to think about becoming a subsidiary of ours. And that hint caused Nissan to balk at the merger idea. Now, if things could be salvaged, maybe these two crazy kids can smooth things over. It is Valentine's Day season after all. The resulting car company would become the world's third largest manufacturer behind only Toyota and the VW Auto Group. Think about how big the VW Auto Group is. I mean, around the world, they not only sell Volkswagen, but they sell Porsche, they sell Audi, they sell Lamborghini, they sell Bentley. And then they got a whole lot of stuff that's in and around Europe. So, yeah, they're much bigger than most people really probably thought they were initially. And while VW doesn't necessarily sell as many vehicles in the U.S., Honda doesn't necessarily sell as many vehicles across the board as Nissan does here in the United States. It's not that far behind. And worldwide, the valuation of the two is actually markedly different in favor of Honda. As companies, Honda is valued 4 times what Nissan is valued at. Now, some of that is due to the debt concerns, but either way, the debt concerns about Nissan from Honda and their desire to suddenly become the parent company instead of equal partners means the deal is definitely on the rocks. I don't know as there's hope of a resurrection, and this, again, could affect NASCAR, as both Nissan and Honda are both considered the manufacturers that NASCAR has most talked to and talked about. NASCAR's hallways possibly, I mean, right now you're just dealing with Chevrolet, Ford, and Toyota. Honda is what most of the pundits of whatever source think that they were the most likely to come in. We've often said that we think Nissan would be just as good to come in because, what are you going to come in with? If you really stop and think about it, you got to have a pickup truck entry. Nissan's got the Titan, Honda's got the Ridgeline, and you can say what you want about the Ridgeline being a pickup, but technically it meets by legal standards the definition of a pickup. No, it's not as big as a Titan or a Ram or an F-150 or a Silverado or a Tundra, but it still meets the technical definition of one. And if you're going by what Toyota uses the Camry. Honda's got the Accord. Nissan's got the Maxima. I get it. Toyota uses the Super nickname or Super nameplate when it comes to the Xfinity series. Honda could use the Civic. Nissan could use the Sentra or the Altima. Or they could go out and, find the sports car, sporty version. Honda's bringing back the Prelude name. It's easy for me to say. And, of course, you got the Z car for Nissan, or the GTR for that matter, although I think they would probably use the 300ZX if they were going to do it. There's plenty of opportunities there. Again, will this actually happen? I don't know. NASCAR officials seem to be optimistic about a fourth car coming in, but they never did mention a specific brand. Back in this recent podcast, 2014 Cup champion turned Fox Sports NASCAR analyst Kevin Harvick said, quote, "We've heard a lot of rumors about Honda coming into the sport." See, he's one of those guys. "Whether it's them or not, I don't know that to be true, but they keep bringing up the fact that there's a new manufacturer coming in, and I want to see it. It just opens up opportunities for so many teams." And he's right about that. This goes back to the whole idea of what Joe Gibbs had been talking about when Toyota came in. I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond of Toyota than be the small fish in the big pond of Chevrolet, where Hendrick Motorsports dominates the whole thing. And that's why he went to Toyota. There will be teams that will be willing to go with a Honda and or a Nissan, depending on which brand it was that came in. But there are so many other things that are involved here, and it's not just on the motorsports deal. Obviously, this is on the worldwide scale. Again, can these two figure it out? Time will tell. Pretty cool program named after the late Alan Kulwicki, set to start up this year and is aiming to help top short track racers work their way up into the upper levels of NASCAR. It's called the Kulwicki Driver Development Program. It's going to select 5 drivers to be on sort of a scholarship. I can't think of a better way to put it. The driver is going to be judged on several factors, not the least of which is on-track performance. It's also going to judge drivers in their off-the-track civic activity, so you got to be involved in your community. Program promotion for specifically the Kulwicki Driver Development Program. If you're going to be part of it, might as well promote it. How do you interact with the fans? So if you happen to be a driver who's, really good on the track, but not necessarily good with the public, this could be a problem. And how do you talk about the legacy of Alan Kulwicki? So you better know about the guy who passed away plus 30 years ago. They will pay the participants. They'll get some $7,000 in money, goods, and services throughout the course of the racing season, where the drivers will also get training in fitness, how to do interviews, big once you get into the bigger series, media presentation, how to act and not act on social media in preparation for advancing up into the levels, where there's, let's face it, a whole lot more media exposure and a whole lot more eyeballs on what it is that you are doing and not doing, as the case may be. The 5 who are chosen as the finalists will end up battling each other, if indirectly, for $30,000 in prize money and goods and services that'll be split amongst the top 3 finishers in the program each and every year. And if you're thinking about applying, here's what you need to have. Okay? Those thinking of applying must have experience in asphalt late models, pro and or super late model, or comparable forms of racing. But here's the thing. If you're already in NASCAR, you ain't eligible. Series where the drivers are not eligible, named as the Cup, Xfinity, Craftsman Truck, ARCA Menards trio of divisions in the Canadian Series. So in other words, if you're down in, say, the Whelen Modified Tour, you might actually be able to take a part in it. There are really no age limits, but program officials note that a preference will be given to those who are between the ages of 16 and 25. The deadline to apply for the program is February the 9th, so you got literally until tomorrow night at midnight Eastern time. You can find out more by going onto the website kulwickiddp.com. That is KULWICKIDDP.com. I kind of looked into it a little bit. It's a pretty cool situation right there, and I got to admit, if this program works out the way that they hope that it does, it'll be a real good program for up-and-coming drivers. And one other note here, when it comes to just NASCAR as a whole, SiriusXM Satellite Radio has announced the addition of a new podcast to the NASCAR channel lineup. It's entitled Never Settle. It's going to feature ESPN Motorsports reporter Marty Smith, a longtime 7-time Cup Series champion Jimmy Johnson. It is set to debut this week, specifically February the 12th. It will air at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central Time. That is an hour that is right now kind of reserved as a replay for the show that Danielle Trotta does with Larry McReynolds before they get into the Dave Moody show. So that will fill, at least with some original programming, 1 hour a week. The duo is set to delve into that week's headlines, share story of their times covering and or participating in the series, and expand beyond just racing. I've had the chance to be around Jimmy Johnson. He's a pretty cool guy, a little bit reserved, but got kind of a nice, dry sense of humor. I got to admit, I really like Marty Smith. I've never met the guy, but I like what he does on the air with Ryan McGee and Marty and McGee on ESPN Radio, and I like what he does when it comes to NASCAR coverage. this might actually be pretty cool. Marty is a very laid-back guy with a pretty good sense of humor, too, so it could be kind of fun. Getting into Cup Series stuff, while NASCAR did consider the clash of Bowman Gray a big success, they're set to talk to Ty Gibbs about his on-track actions before we get to Daytona. In what appeared to be something of a retaliatory action against Justin Haley, Ty Gibbs said that he tried to let Haley know that he wasn't happy with him, but in the end, what was intended to be a little nudge turned into a door slam that, well, launched Gibbs' number 54 Toyota Camry into the air. Thank you to producer John for getting that picture up on CRN Live on YouTube. I mean, nice action shot right there. Cup Series Managing Director Brad Moran said that it will be just a talk. There are no plans to hit Gibbs with any penalty, but probably a warning. Don't do it again. Moran then added, quote, "We know it's a tough place and there's going to be some aggression, some good short track racing, which is what we wanted, but I'll be having a discussion with Ty before we go on the track at Daytona just to get his take on what happened, make sure we're clear on what we need to do from that point forward." So in other words, yeah, I think he is being warned. Settle down. And let's not take this to Daytona, okay? Put that behind you. Richard Petty is teaming up with Sugarlands Distilling Company, and this is a company that we're familiar with. They have been in and around NASCAR now for going on a decade. And they're coming out with a limited edition of their Roaming Man whiskey. It's going to commemorate Richard Petty's legendary career in motorsports and NASCAR specifically. The label, which will be for Richard Petty specifically, will feature the famed number 43 that we all know and love. And Richard Petty's signature will be on there as well. It's going to be pretty limited in how you can get it. It's only going to be available initially at Total Wine in Daytona Beach, Florida, starting this week, February the 13th. And Petty will be on hand on that debut day to sign the bottles personally from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Then, after the Daytona 500, this will be shipped to some other select retailers in and around Florida. And then it will also be on sale at Sugarland's own Gatlinburg Distillery. So if you happen to be in and around Gatlinburg after the Daytona 500, you might be able to grab a bottle. But grab it quick because I get the feeling they'll go pretty quick. Can you order it online? Not that I can tell. I looked around on the site and I couldn't find it initially. Maybe there's somebody who could dig around and find something that would actually tell you differently, but I couldn't find it. I'll just put it that way. After Kevin Harvick retired, many of his sponsors shifted to other Cup Series rides. That includes Busch Light. Busch Light moved over to Ross Chastain's number 1 Chevrolet. Company set to take advantage of that by putting Chastain in one of their 2 Super Bowl ads set to air tomorrow evening. Chastain going to be paired with the Busch guy in one of the 2 commercials that will air during the game and then likely continue to air in coming weeks. The 2 are apparently out trying to keep things lighthearted and playing for laughs. The spot is called Circles. It'll play on kind of going around in circles, not just on the track for Ross Chastain, but finding yourself going around in circles in the woods. There you go. Nice picture of the 2 of them there up on CRN Live on YouTube. To the truck series here, where Nice Motorsports, founded by U.S. Marine Corps veteran Al Nice back in 2016, now heading into their 10th season. Planning on a celebration of that anniversary, the team's set to roll out some commemorative merchandise that will be available through their online store. It'll start with a hat. More set to roll out as the season progresses. After starting with 1 truck in a little itty-bitty shack of a garage back in 2016, they now will this year put 4 trucks out on the track. And they will, as I noted, be celebrating throughout the course of the season. So, yeah, pretty cool stuff there. Starting off real small and growing big. That's congratulations to Al Nice and everybody there. And then there's the veteran who is kind of living up to the whole idea of once racing gets into your veins, it never really gets out. Certainly not easily. Ask Norm Benning. Yeah, Norm Benning. Remember that name? Norm Benning told media this week he's planning on getting his cell phone number 6 Chevrolet Silverado into several races this year. Adds that he will certainly enter for the season opener at Daytona. Then he'll try to get into the field in Martinsville in April, Talladega in October, and said, pending sponsorship, more races are possible. Go for it, Norm. See if you can keep up with the crowd. I mean, here's the sad thing about it. The last, I want to say 3 or 4 times I've seen him out at Talladega, car didn't have enough strength to be able to keep up with the pack. And that's a problem. So, Norm, whatever you're going to bring it. And bring it hard. We'll shift our attention over to the guys over at Formula One when we come back.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Network.
Welcome back into the show. I'm Steve West. Matt Nicholson has other things going on, so he was with us by phone in hour number 1. Not with us, unfortunately, in hour number 2, but he will be back in studio next week. Good Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise, as they say. I'm Steve West, producer John on CRN Live on YouTube. So however you're checking us out, via the flagship radio station or via CRN Live on YouTube, we appreciate you. Into Formula One here, where the Pirelli tire test happened this past week. Took place on Tuesday and Wednesday at the Catalunya circuit in Barcelona, the same one where Lewis Hamilton wrecked a Ferrari. In Spain, the drivers from Ferrari and McLaren were tested possible tires for 2026. Remember, new engine regulations are coming in for 2026, and Pirelli wants to get ahead of it. So using what they call modified mules from the 2024 racers over the 2 days, the Ferrari pair, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, turned 161 and 160 laps respectively. Leclerc set the fastest time of the 2 days, fast lap of 1 minute 14.971 seconds. That was on the second day. The first day Hamilton was driving. Kind of comparing it, his fastest lap was 1 minute 15.930 seconds. But here's the thing that we don't know. We don't know what compounds were used. We don't know whether the tires that Leclerc used were significantly softer. We don't know any of that. And Pirelli was really quick to make sure that they stated that. Don't read too much into the lap times, because their plans for each of the drivers and what compounds they were going to be using was unique. The other two, McLaren's Lando Norris, he turned 159 laps on Tuesday. His fast time, 1 minute 15.215 seconds. And on the second day, Oscar Piastri took control of the modified 2024 racer, 152 laps in all, 1 minute 15.815 seconds. Again, what this tells me is that these tires, not necessarily, by the way, using the 2026 engine regulations either. This is just them throwing things up against the wall to see what sticks. Could this mean we get faster next year? Not totally sure. We'll have to wait and see what Pirelli comes out with later, because I'm sure they're going to have a post-test report. Sauber team is opening up a new facility again in the UK. Sauber wants to prepare to become the Audi works team in 2026. Sauber's long been headquartered in Switzerland, and they state they will continue to house their main chassis building operation in Switzerland in the town of Hinwil. And I'm probably mispronouncing that, and I apologize ahead of time. They also stated that the engines will be assembled and tested in Germany at Audi's main engine test facility. But they are opening up a UK facility to be their technical center. Okay. Audi's chief operating officer, Mattia Benota, said this, quote, "We are excited to establish our tech center in the UK to complement our site in Switzerland, which will continue to lead our main engineering operations and experience the largest team growth." The team says that they're looking in an area known as Motorsport Valley. 7 of the 10 teams currently have an F1 facility in and around that area. If it's not their headquarters, they certainly have a facility. We're talking about an area that includes Silverstone, where the race course is, Milton Keynes, and the immediate area of that particular area. They hope to have it open and operating sometime this summer, which means they're looking for something that's pretty much already outfitted and ready to go. Benotto added, quote, "Expanding into the UK allows us to remain close to one of the world's most dynamic motorsport ecosystems." Wow, we're using big words. "Our vision is to create a strong collaborative network across Switzerland into the UK, driving in innovation and performance." And here's the thing, it can't hurt. I mean, Sauber's been a bottom feeder for several years now. Case in point, they finished last in the Constructors' Cup in 2024, so it can't hurt. But when we talk about this particular situation and think about what we just talked about last week on the show when it came to Haas F1 and their relationship with Toyota, they didn't want to use Toyota's wind tunnel because it's located in Germany. And they didn't want the extra expense of having a facility in Concord, North Carolina, suburb of Charlotte. I'm going to be up there, as a matter of fact, leaving there once I get done here. I'm not going to be that far away from that shop. So they have one shop there. Technically, it's Kannapolis, but it's all in that same basic area. They've got a shop. They're one of the 7 of the 10 that has a shop in the UK. And they have a facility in Italy in the same place as the headquarters of Scuderia Ferrari. So they've got 3 facilities because it helps them work with their relationship with Ferrari. It's the main hub of where everybody is when you're talking about Britain. And of course, they're the American-based team, so they have the operations center that's based here in the United States, although it's getting smaller and smaller. Why would they want to then have to travel to Germany just to do wind tunnel testing when all they got to do is go across the street effectively from their Maranello, Italy location and use Ferrari's wind tunnel? Here's kind of the same situation. You got Switzerland, you got Germany already for what is the Sauber entry and what Audi is, and now you're going to open up a 3rd facility? I don't know whether that's necessarily the best use of your time and or money, but that's their call, so good luck to them. Since it was conceived of and started a couple of years ago, we've wondered why the Las Vegas Grand Prix got set up at the time that it was. The reasons given were kind of twofold. First, it was done to cater to viewers in Europe. Secondly, it was done to avoid the general shift change at the resorts and casinos in and around the area of the street course that were being affected by it. But it appears it's going to change in year 3 due to the teams. The races have kind of caused some concern because in the previous weeks leading up to the Las Vegas race, they've been racing at times that we here in the United States are used to. They go to race at COTA, then they go to Mexico City, and that is the central time zone, what we call central time zone here in the U.S. Then they go to Brazil. It's a bit earlier. It's 3 hours ahead of central time. So the drivers and the teams kind of get used to racing at those particular times, and then they go to Vegas, and suddenly they're racing at about midnight local time. And all of this stuff will play with your internal clock, not just a little bit. It led, for example, Max Verstappen to say at this moment, it's such a big time shift that especially at the end of the season when everybody's already a bit tired, I think it's a little bit much. So maybe it'd be ideal to find a different kind of date or time, because I think we need to do it a little bit more kind of an American time. Okay. Of course, maybe for ticket sales, I don't know if that's ideal, so maybe we can find a bit of a solution there. I think the 12-hour time zone shifts and also being completely different timings for the racing, though, I find that a little bit much. Keep in mind, last year, they raced in Vegas, and then they headed straight to the Middle East. Literally the opposite side of the planet. 12-hour time difference. That's what he was talking about. So F1 decided we're going to change things up a little. They're moving up the race by a couple of hours. According to the latest scheduling, the race will begin on November the 22nd, Saturday night, just to remind you, at 8 p.m. Las Vegas time. Final practice and qualifying will take place on Friday evening, November the 21st, starting at 4:30 p.m. and then again at 8 p.m. Vegas time. Thursday, we'll have a practice session, 1 and 2, 4:30 and 8 p.m. This does, again, try to avoid the general shift changing that happens at all those resorts and casinos around there as best as they possibly can. Because from what I can tell, that shift change comes at about 10 p.m. local time. Haas F1, despite having the technical partnership that we just talked about, announced that for the foreseeable future, they will not be using the Toyota wind tunnel. We just talked about that. And here's the other side of it. Toyota's wind tunnel, let me add on to that. Toyota's wind tunnel was state-of-the-art when it was built for their F1 exploits in the early 2000s. That's 20 years ago. Think about it. We're in 2025 now. How the heck did we get here so fast? Several other teams actually use the Toyota tunnel as well. That includes Ferrari. The Scuderia has now refitted and upgraded their own wind tunnel in Maranello. So anything that they could have gotten from the Toyota wind tunnel, again, they can just go across the street and get it there. We'll find out. But I get the funny feeling that with Toyota's investment, this will cause some changes. We talked about how they're a little bit more money flush. They're not going to need Gene Haas's influx out of his own wallet to be able to succeed in 2025. We already talked about that as well. So that's kind of a good thing. I think Toyota's involvement will help in other ways. Exactly how that works, I don't know. Will it involve eventually that facility in Germany? Potentially. But again, Haas F1 isn't talking because right now they're just kind of happy right where they are. Meantime, Ferrari, which does have a good driver development operation, said that for the 2025 season, they have their top reserve driver as former Sauber driver Zhou Guanyu. Now, think about it. Ollie Behrman filled that role last year, but he's now full-time for Haas F1 in 2025, so Ferrari needed to decide who was going to step into that role. They chose to go with one driver who has F1 experience. They've actually got two named. We'll get to it here in a minute. But remember, Zhou lost his ride at Sauber, and as the team prepares to make the switch to Audi ownership, they brought in Nico Hülkenberg from Haas F1 and brought in rookie Gabriel Bortoleto, who Nico can kind of take under his wing for their 2025 and probably 2026 lineup. So Zhou and Valtteri Bottas were out looking for rides. Zhou was a part of the Ferrari Driver Academy from 2015 to 2018, so it allowed the team to say that he's got something of a homecoming here. Zhou and the incumbent reserve driver, Antonio Giovinazzi, who was not lucky enough to get an F1 ride for 2025, will be the team's reserve driver pairing. This also probably means, because we haven't heard an official reserve driver announcement from Haas F1, that they, just like they did in 2024, will use Ferrari as their reserve driver lineup as well. Ferrari seemed happy with that last year. I imagine it'll happen again. And I don't see the drivers with the same number of points that Kevin Magnussen had on his F1 Super license, so maybe they won't have to worry about it. I don't know. Speaking of rookies, we mentioned the car numbers for the incoming rookies and which ones they chose to use. Mentioned that here. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? It was one of the two. But Formula1.com decided to dive in a little bit deeper, asking specifically why the drivers chose the numbers they chose. So we're going to go in numerical order here, starting on the low side and working our way up to the biggest number. The lowest number is the aforementioned Gabriel Bortoleto, 5. Said he went with that number because that's what he used when he won the 2023 Formula 3 championship. So he's hoping it's going to bring him a little extra luck. In the number 6, Racing Bulls rookie Isaac Hajar. Isaac said that the number is one that he used in his karting days, and he's always liked the number. Alpine has Jack Doohan coming in to the number 7. He said he chose it because he drove with it in 2019. Plus, In addition to that, one of his racing idols, Kimi Räikkönen, used the number 7 as well, so it just seemed to make sense for him. So that one's a twofold. Generally, that's what you're going to find. Drivers tend to choose numbers specifically because they feel that it brings them luck. Somebody in their family used it, or they used it previously, whatever it is. Kimi Antonelli coming in to drive for Mercedes this season, sporting the number 12. Apparently, it's a number that Jack Doohan had also thought of taking, but Antonelli got his request in first. Why did Antonelli want the number 12? Said he used it in winning the 2022 Italian and German F4 titles, and again in 2023 when he won the Middle East and European Formula Regional titles. Said he also used it because the late, great Ayrton Senna, one of his idols, or his main idol, used it as well. And that brings us to probably the most unusual number here. Ollie Behrman, Haas F1's incoming rookie, coming over from Ferrari. He got 3 starts in F1 last year, but he's seemingly odd choice for 2025 is 87. And this is different from what he used when he was the sub last year when he sported the number 38. He said he changed because first, it was the number his father used during his racing career, 87. Secondly, he used it because as he rose up through the ranks, that was the number that he was using, again, probably because of his dad. And third, it also happens to be a combination of his and his brother's birthdays. Ollie was born May the 8th. His brother was born August 7th, 8-7. Again, different reasons for different people. The next time we'll see the drivers will officially be at the car launches. The official London unveiling is going to be happening at the O2 Arena. I think you'll be able to watch it online. I don't know about television. I don't think ESPN, ABC is going to be carrying it. Probably watch it on Formula1.com. London event will take place on February the 18th, so we're 10 days away from that. Williams has decided, though, they're going to jump the gun. They're going to give a quick preview of their 2025 racers on Valentine's Day, Friday. So we'll try and give you a look at it when we reconvene here next Saturday for the big show. Then each team will be in London holding other unveilings. Ferrari will take to the Fiorano track for a shakedown test on February the 19th, the day after the official unveiling. Aston Martin will do their solo ceremony on the 23rd, and on the 24th, Mercedes will do a standalone reveal show as well. The other 5 teams haven't really talked about it. We're talking about McLaren, Red Bull, and their sister company, the Racing Bulls. Alpine, Haas F1, Sauber. They haven't announced if they're going to do a separate showing of their cars before the official preseason testing begins. And think about this. We're only a couple of weeks away from that. That's going to happen February the 26th through the 28th in Bahrain before they then head to Australia to begin to prepare for the official beginning of the year. That's going to happen the weekend of March 14th through the 16th. Considering the fact that generally these teams don't want to step on each other, and Haas F1 and Alpine and Sauber have all been fairly secretive of this anyway. They usually don't reveal until they get out onto the track for the test session, and then they unwrap the cars. I get the funny feeling most of them will probably do the exact same thing here. A couple more things here before we have to hit that final break of the show here. Formula One officials have announced that they have extended a partnership with Moet and Chandon. Why would we talk about champagne? Well, it's the official champagne of the series. Means the brand will be part of each post-race podium celebration. Company came into Formula One in their first year in 1950 as the company heads Paul Chandon Moet and his cousin, Count Frederick Chandon de Brie. Brie? I don't know. It's French. I can't pronounce it. Handed race winner Juan Manuel Fangio a bottle and urged him to share a toast after the French Grand Prix that season and began the tradition of post-race celebrations with champagne. Organizers and the FIA worked up in the Australian Grand Prix and agreed that in the wake of some of the crashes that happened in this race last year, they needed to make some changes to the course and hoping to avoid repeating having said crashes. Changes mainly affect turns 6 and 7, where in 2024, George Russell got into Fernando Alonso. He spun off the course, slammed into a tire barrier, but kind of rebounded and ended up back out onto the main racing surface. Not a good thing. Before the 2024 race, the organizers redid those same turns, made them faster, and that was the concern for the drivers leading up to last year's race. Alex Albon had a spin in the first practice session. It kind of backed that concern up, so officials looked at redoing the turns again, this time hoping to slow the cars down or maybe adding a paved runoff area, eliminating the gravel trap there. Maybe they moved the barriers to an angle or some angles with the hope that they could keep cars from rebounding onto the track surface, like what happened to the Mercedes of Russell. A lot of possibilities there, right? In the end, the FIA decided to do the least amount of work possible. They're just going to move the barriers and change the angles in order to avoid that rebound. Will it work? God only knows. Again, a lot of this depends on exactly what angle it is that said car might hit that barrier. Just because you change the angle of the tire barrier doesn't mean that if he hits it at the wrong angle, he's not going to end up rebounding back out onto the track surface. So I don't know. To me, it might be a little bit too little. They said they will change the curbing through the turns too. They're changing them from positive or raised curves to negative or sunken curves, something more like rumble strips, hoping to keep the cars more settled through those turns. Again, if one driver gets into another driver, that's not really going to matter whether the curbing is raised or lowered. Time will tell.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Fuel only, fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in. Since I'm going to be sitting in a car driving from East Central Alabama up to Charlotte, I wanted to stand a little bit because, let's face it, I'm not going to get a whole lot of standing in over the next few hours, so I wanted to try it. So here we go. In our final segment here, let's see how much we can get to. First of all, Netflix and their latest season of Drive to Survive set to be released officially. The date to be able to start checking it out, March 7th. This will be the 7th season of the series, and like the previous years, it will feature 10 episodes. It's going to give the viewers a week to get in all episodes before the 2025 season gets underway. Again, the weekend of February 14th through the 16th with the Australian Grand Prix expected to be much the same. They'll concentrate on at least one team a week, and maybe just maybe we'll get into a whole lot more about exactly what it was that McLaren was able to do to suddenly jump up and take away the Constructors' Cup title away from Red Bull, and what in the world happened to Red Bull that caused them not just to slip to second, but fall to third behind Ferrari. It's going to be fun to watch. Speaking of Netflix, this is interesting. So we talked about how NASCAR, specifically with the Cup Series, but Xfinity as well, because they switched totally. They're now on the CW. And then you got the Cup Series split between 4 entities. Fox, then you go to Amazon Prime, then you go to Warner Brothers Discovery on TNT. And then you finish up with NBC, right? Formula One has been on ABC ESPN for, well, since 2018. It's when they took it over, here in the United States anyway. It's been a series of short-term deals. It's almost easy for me to say, right? It's been a series of short-term deals, kind of leaving them the option to change things up as they moved along and grew as they hoped that they would, and they have. Current deal with ABC ESPN runs out at the end of this upcoming season, and here's another little trick. Netflix recently hired the former ESPN VP of production. Her name, Kate Jackson. No, not the former Charlie's Angel. She is the director of sports programming for the streaming service now, and Netflix and F1 do have that strong relationship from the aforementioned Drive to Survive. And on top of that, Netflix has been upping their live sports coverage. You might have noticed this. They've been doing things like airing Christmas Day NFL games. They did that boxing, and I use that term loosely, exhibition between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. Picked up WWE's weekly Raw series. They've got the next 2 Women's World Cups that they're going to be putting on the streaming service. And now they're talking about potentially getting into motorsports with Formula One. Pretty good chance they would do exactly what ESPN ABC is doing, and that's basically just take the Sky Sports programming and put it on Netflix, but that's not the worst thing in the world, is it? See whether or not ABC ESPN really still wants to be in the world of motorsports. One would think they would, because it's really all they've got when it comes to motorsports now that Superstar Racing Experience has gone the way of the dodo bird, apparently. So I don't know. Time will tell whether or not they stick with it or whether Netflix comes in and swipes it out from under them. Andretti Global uncovered their 2025 racers for their drivers. The number 26 Gainbridge Honda, set to be driven by Colton Herta, features mainly yellow and white look with black accents on the front and rear wings. Got the number 27, which is sponsored by Chili's. That Honda-powered ride, to be driven by Kyle Kirkwood, replaces the yellow with the red. Features white on the front and rear wings as well. And then if you're looking on CRN Live on YouTube, the far back one is the number 28 Bryant-sponsored Honda-powered entry with Marcus Ericsson at the controls. A little bit more red and black than white and red on the front and rear wings in connection with the respective partners, but 3 good-looking cars, so now you kind of get an idea of what it is that you're looking for when it comes to the 2025 season, if you are following IndyCar. Then there's Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. They've got a rookie coming in by the name of Lewis Foster for 2025. And he got himself a pretty nice award here this past week. January the 30th, specifically, he was awarded the Graham Hill Trophy from the British Racing Drivers Club at the award ceremony in London. The trophy, named after the 1966 winner of the Indy 500 and 2-time F1 world champions, given annually to the British driver, this is their words, not mine, quote, with the most meritorious performance in single-seater racing. Think about that for a moment or two. Some pretty stiff competition. British drivers are in all kinds of single-seater competition. Formula One, Formula E, Formula 2, NTT Data IndyCar Series, Indy Next. A lot of the other feeder series feature British drivers. Foster, they said, earned it by claiming the 2024 Indy Next title, claiming 8 wins in 14 races, and clinching the title the race before the season finale. Got the promotion up to IndyCar with Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, too. All right, knock yourself out, man. No pressure. Last week, we talked about McLaren CEO Zach Brown's comments about how he thought IndyCar could learn some lessons from Formula One. Well, the drivers come in saying, well, pretty much the same thing. Connor Daly has checked in, said he thinks, yeah, Zach Brown's onto something. Noted he feels that the series needs to race, for example, in Mexico and Argentina now, if not yesterday. The 10-year series veteran, who has 115 starts under his belt this year, going to drive like he did last year for Juncos Hollinger Racing, talked to motorsport.com, said he sees big things maybe even a win this season for both himself and the team, but then thinking bigger picture. Talked about what IndyCar has planned and what he thinks they should do. When asked whether or not IndyCar should, like F1, have a cost cap, he said this, quote, "I don't think so. Our budgets are still way less than an F1 budget." He's not wrong. We've talked about that in the past. And yeah, the budgeting for a really highly competitive IndyCar racer is going up, but it's nowhere near F1. F1's budget cap is, for all intents and purposes, we'll call it $150 million. We could go into the details and get off into the weeds, but I'm not. We'll just keep it nice and rounded. We'll say it's $150 million. Talked about a Cup Series car. To be high-end, Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, that kind of stuff, you're probably talking $25 to $30 million per car. IndyCars now used to be really solidly in the $5 million range. Now you're starting to edge up more into the $7 to $10 million range, but still kind of a relative bargain, don't you think? So he's right. And then he added this when it came to the budgeting, quote, "There's no way to make motor racing just fair for everyone. With how competitive all of our teams are, though, I think we're still really lucky. Even in NASCAR, the discrepancy between the top teams and the bottom ones is a lot. It's the same in Formula One, and even though we still have some of that in IndyCar, it's much tighter. Didn't want to see a cost cap blunt advancement," he said, either. Okay. Well, and here's the thing. Of all the things that Penske Entertainment's talked about when it comes to doing IndyCar things, cost cap has never been part of that. Then he got asked about racing outside of the United States and Canada, said, quote, "I think that for sure we would be able to race in Mexico. Obviously, Pato O'Ward has such a passionate fan base there. But from what I saw, even with Ricardo and Agustin doing the laps that they did in Argentina, the fans that were there made it big. And if that many people were there for a demonstration, why aren't we racing there? Why aren't we down there immediately?" He did caution about how far IndyCar could or should go, saying this, quote, "I don't necessarily think the move for us is to go to Europe. I think North, South, Central America, that region of the world, probably a better area for us to focus on. And, you know, in America this year with Fox, it will be helpful, I hope." I think he's right. I mean, they're already right now in Canada. Mexico, that's an easy jaunt. We talked about this when it came to NASCAR. They're taking the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series down there and knock yourself out. IndyCar, I think, because they have a much shorter schedule, 17 planned races, they have a little bit more leeway. They could actually run a points race down in Brazil, Argentina, or somewhere in South America. NASCAR is just way too packed for them. If you've ever been to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but if you've never been to the museum that sits in the infield, you're doing yourself a major disservice. I need to go back there, actually. Last time I was there was 1996. I was at the track to see the doubleheader back in 2021, but the museum was closed because they had started the renovation project at that time. So plenty has changed in the almost 3 full decades that I've been there, including the cars. Part of those changes, they got to be paid for, right? Indianapolis doesn't do that. The museum is separately owned. So the track owners, Penske Entertainment, really don't have that much to do with it. So they are planning on auctioning some off their famed racers that have been on display and aren't anymore for whatever reason or reasons, not just the auction so that they can raise the money. IMS Museum has partnered with RM Sotheby's auction house, hoping to raise some $100 million. Based upon the estimated sale prices of the cars they're putting up for auction, they should at least meet, if not exceed, their hoped-for figure. Among the rides going the block, 1954 Mercedes W196 Streamliner F1 car. That ride appraised at over $52 million by itself. Okay. Then you got a 1964 Le Mans winning Ferrari 250 LM. That appraised at north of $26 million. Other cars that'll be up for grabs, a 1966 Ford GTO Mark II. Think Le Mans, 24 hours. 1957 Chevrolet Corvette SS Experimental, which was codenamed XP64. Got a 1991 Benetton B191 Formula One racer. You know, Michael Schumacher era. Museum officially closed in November of 2023 as they began an intense renovation of the interior and all their displays. It's set to reopen in April, just before this year's May visit in preparation for the Indy 500. Spokesperson told Racer.com, quote, "After much deliberation, the museum decided to reassess and de-access and sell 9 vehicles from our collection that do not match our mission. $52 million car doesn't match your mission? Okay. We're also selling 2 additional vehicles previously approved for deaccession in 2021. The sale of the artifacts is something we've been doing since 2017. These are the last of the vehicles that are not directly connected to the mission of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. In other words, those who have probably raced on that particular track. The initial goal, they said, was to raise $89 million. Museum officials said that they can reach 9 figures. In other words, maybe more than $100 million. And if they do, they'll look at investing in other race cars that could come in and take the place of the 11 cars that they chose to put up for auction in total. The Mercedes that we mentioned got auctioned off in Germany on February the 1st. I said it got assessed at $52 million. They got $53. The Ferrari I mentioned is set to sell in Paris this weekend. So we'll see. The other 9 cars will cross the auction block in Miami at the end of this month. We'll keep you updated on it. There was a time, just last year, when Fox was set to team with ABC, ESPN, and Warner Brothers Discovery on the Venue streaming service. We talked about it here on this show. You might remember that. But that failed because of antitrust lawsuits and just a whole lot of red tape. So the catch-all sports streamer is officially dead. D-E-D. Now Fox is talking about launching a streaming service to help fill that void. Plans are to launch the platform by the end of 2025. Fox head honcho Lachlan Murdoch said that announced the plans for the new service at the company's quarterly earnings conference call just earlier this week. Said this direct-to-consumer bundle will package Fox over-the-air network along with Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2, Fox News, Fox Business, and Fox Weather all onto one platform. And unlike ESPN Plus, are you listening to me, ESPN Plus? You don't have to have a cable or satellite service to get all the content. What a novel idea. You get paid for it. You might as well show it all, right? ESPN Plus. You might think that the Fox-owned Tubi streaming service might be the perfect start, but again, that's free. They said they're going to keep that. And some things will be included on the Tubi streaming service in some instances, like this weekend's Super Bowl, for example. But for regular sports, NASCAR, IndyCar, NFL, Major League Baseball, Live Golf, Tubi's not going to be included in that. So then you have to go. I don't know what the pricing is going to be. I don't even know what the title of this is going to be, but this is going to be something to watch out for if you are, like me, unaffiliated with any cable or satellite service whatsoever. Another cool thing going on as we turn our attention over to the NHRA and running out of time quickly. If you happen to be going down for the NHRA season opener Gator Nationals in Gainesville, make sure you check out the latest edition of Swamp Rat Alley. You might be asking, what is that? Well, this is 4 of the racers that were piloted by the legend Big Daddy Don Garlits. This is the 3rd year for Swamp Rat Alley. Special showing of some of the racers that he has used over the years. This year, the 4 to be included are Swamp Rat 1 Purple, so named for a distinctive purple hue used in the 1956 season. It was painted that color because Garlits saw Mel Heath win that year's U.S. Nationals running a purple ride, and he liked it, so he copied it. There's also the regular Swamp Rat 1, where he topped 176 miles per hour. This is a car where he lowered the front end and kind of decreased the drag, used a heavily modified fuel delivery system, and suddenly that became the norm in the NHRA. Another edition of Swamp Rat Run from 1956 was raced at Brooksville, Florida's airport. It was a test mule, really. It topped 128 miles per hour in a short run. And then there's Swamp Rat 1B. This one was built by Garlits in 1959, driven by a driver by the name of Art Malone. That topped 183 miles per hour in its first run. Garlits would continue to use it. In 1961, gunned it to a run of 204.54 miles per hour. That was only the second time an NHRA entry officially topped the 200 mile per hour mark. High-powered Vance and Hines Pro Stock Motorcycle Team has officially unveiled their 2025 lineup of riders. The duo of Gage Herrera and Richard Gadsden will be back for a second straight season. Herrera is the 2-time defending champion of the Pro Stock Motorcycle Series. Gadsden performed well enough in his rookie year to place 3rd in the final standings in 2024. They're going to be back, and they're going to be tough to deal with. And Josh Hart Racing has announced that they've come to terms on an extension with R&L Carriers for the partnership on the Top Fuel ride to continue. R&L Carriers touts themselves as one of the nation's leading freight shippers. This partnership is going to highlight the carrier's business-to-business relationship. And one more note here before we take off, and this affects Formula E because we've already begun their season. They're about to get into their third racing weekend, as we mentioned during the race recap and schedule that we talked about at the beginning of the show. They're about to go into their third racing weekend in Jeddah, doubleheader weekend, racing Friday and Saturday, right? They're about to undergo a significant change because their longtime race director, Scott Elkins, has said, yeah, he's set to retire. His pending retirement, which will actually be effective after they come to race the Miami E-Prix on April the 12th, then he's gone. Stated that his reason for announcing it now was just due to personal reasons. He couldn't finish out the year. And it will also get some time to get his successor, one Marek Hanaszewski, who's been in race control with Formula E since 2014 and has been the race or deputy race director for the past couple of years, is set to step into that role. He also filled the role when Elkins wasn't able to make this season's opening race in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So Elkins says he'll be on hand for next weekend's race at the Jeddah E-Prix doubleheader. He will be, though, the deputy race director and will basically turn it all over to Hanaszewski. Hanaszewski will be the race director for that race and probably the Miami E-Prix too. How are they doing as they head into the meat of their 11th season? Well, they stated the cumulative audience from CBS Sports got them some 10.5 million people watching the race in Mexico City. Now, here's the problem with this. This does not mean that 10.5 million people watched the race as it aired live. That would be the highest rated sporting motorsports event, period. Even beating out the Daytona 500. How many people watched it when it aired live? And then how many people watched it on some sort of a delay? That's where you start to get in all of the cumulatives there. You know, when Daytona talks about how 8 million people watched their race live at the Daytona 500, that's live. Here, this is everything all added together, live, replay, so on and so forth. So take it with a grain of salt. Headed to Charlotte, I'll give you a full report on the National Motorsports Press Association's annual conference next week. Y'all have a great week. Talk to you next week. Don't forget about Cross Flags.
A presentation of the Championship Racing Network.